Hi guys, my name is Hai Tran and I am a real estate lawyer. So welcome to the Legal Corner. Today is our first video for the Legal Corner, and to celebrate this series and also to celebrate the spooky season that it's October, I figured the very first case that we would look at is going to be something about it's about a haunted house, right? So it's a haunted house, apparently, supposedly. And the case is called 1784773 Ontario and KW Labor Association. So this was a 2013 case, and this happened in Kitchener, Ontario, which is quite close to us. So this case was about these purchasers who bought a commercial property, and later when they moved into the property, they supposedly, find out that it is a haunted house, that this house was haunted, right? So that what they did was they tried to sue the sellers, saying that, well, this is something you should have disclosed to us because, well, who wants to buy a home that's haunted? Obviously, the value of the property is going to be a lot lower if a property is haunted by ghosts. So they tried to sue the seller, saying that this is a latent defect and therefore the sellers should have disclosed this to them. So I guess before we jump into what the courts decided, I'm going to talk to you guys about the difference between a latent defect versus a patent defect. So when you are purchasing a property, right, there's two different types of defects that could be present in the property. The first one is a patent defect. Patent defects are said to be not easily, the patent defects are said to be easily discoverable. So these are things that are very obvious. So for example, if you walk into a property and the roof is just collapsing, right? You can see it. This is something that is very easily discoverable. It's very obvious. And when it comes to patent defects, the sellers have no duty to disclose to you that there is this defect. And the reason why is because it's just so obvious, right? You as a purchaser should do your due diligence and factor this into the price of the property. So yeah, a roof collapsing, patent defect. A latent defect, on the other hand, is something that is not as obvious. It's not as easily discoverable. So a latent defect, a good example of that might be something like, the soil, it's contaminated with hazardous waste, right? So that's something that as a purchaser, it's not going to be obvious to you, right? You look at the soil, you have no idea. So that's not obvious. It's not easily discoverable. So when it comes to latent defects, the courts say that, well, certain latent defects need to be disclosed by the seller. And the test that the courts use for that is, well, is this is this latent defect something that is unfit for habitat? Is it dangerous? And is it hazardous to health? If these three factors are present, then yes, the sellers do have a duty to disclose. So I guess now jumping back to the case, the purchasers are trying to argue that this was a latent defect and therefore it also needs to be disclosed. So how did the courts look at this? Well, first they have to determine whether it's a patent defect or a latent defect. And if it is a latent defect, whether it was unfit for habitat, dangerous to the health, and also, hazardous or dangerous. So this case, the courts actually had decided to completely dismiss it. I mean, it's kind of obvious why, and the reason was down to evidence. So when it comes to a house being haunted, how do you really prove that the house is haunted, right? So the purchasers were not able to show evidence that this house was actually haunted or not, and therefore the case was completely dismissed. What does that mean for us, for the regular purchasers out there? What that means is if you buy a home and you think it's haunted and you're trying to get your money back for it, the courts are not going to look, they're probably not going to side with you because there is no evidence and dismiss the case itself. But just something interesting. And yeah, I hope that this case was interesting to you guys and informative. And I'll see you guys next time on the Legal Corner.